Welcome to the Pixel Retentive Podcast, where we, a business owner and an artist, discuss the business of art and the art of business. Hey friends, I'm Carl, founder of Epic Made, and I'm the host of the Pixel Retentive Podcast, where we share our thoughts on creativity, art, and business. Past guests include Jared Beasley of Astoria, Carrie Ann King of Illuminate Labs, and Fadi Bolos of Supportful. I'm forever grateful for the supporters of the podcast, and I'm always looking for more sponsors. That said, Pixel Retentive is brought to you by the creative gurus at Epic Made. Epic Made is a team of strategists and creatives who excel in visual storytelling. Our studio crafts unforgettable animation and illustration that not only captivates your audience, but also drives tangible business results. We specialize in engaging imaginative, pop culture savvy audiences with beloved clients like Nickelodeon, WWE, and Sci-Fi. Visit getepicmade.com and let's collaborate on your next creative campaign. All right, so with us today, we have Jill Kellett. Welcome to the show, Jill.
Hey, thanks for having me, Carl.
Excited to have you. All right, so Jill is the VP of Product at Root Insurance, the largest public insurtech in the United States. She has extensive experience leading cross-functional teams at the intersection of business and design and specializes in navigating critical inflection points like growth and turnarounds. That sounds pretty impressive, Jill. You get paid the big bucks, right? We need this lady crushing it.
Yeah,
I love it.
I'll repeat the name.
But no, like all kidding aside, that does sound absolutely important to have the right leadership in those spaces in these critical times in business. Growth obviously is very, people can see why you need a lot of help at growth.
Sure.
I wonder, you say turnarounds, what does that mean? Like the company is struggling and needs to like pivot the brand or pivot the industry, or like, what is that?
Yeah. It's a great question. It really is. At any time that some portion or the entire business is struggling. So some example turnarounds that I've worked in is, I was brought in to be a VP of creative, and they kind of said, hey, we have this huge team of designers, but we're a data science company, and somehow our design team is bigger than our data science department. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Like, are they producing value? Do we even know? Right. So that was kind of a turnaround moment from a team perspective of like, man, the business doesn't really know what value you create. And so like, it's not saying that you aren't creating value, but it is like, how do we turn that reputation around? How do we like really, or do the hard work of restructuring it if it really isn't adding value, right? How do you come in and become kind of a consultant and really evaluate what's going on? So that can be an example of a turnaround, or it could be in total business. So at Root and other places that I worked for, it was really the company was failing from a financial perspective, and from a business perspective, we were running out of runway. We did not have a structure in which we could grow upon profitably. And so then what do you do in those moments? And it's in those bigger moments, I think everyone's like, well, you don't need design. You don't need creatives. And it's like, no, actually, some of the most helpful work I've seen comes from creative minds in those really tense and kind of painful times in a business. And it's so common. I mean, businesses come and go every day. It's not a failure of any one person. And, it's tough. But yeah, so turnarounds can mean a number of things, but I've got experience kind of on department turnarounds all the way up to like full company turnarounds.
That's amazing. And an extensive answer. Thank you so much. I definitely have a better grasp of what you mean by that now. That's super cool. So before we deep dive a little more today, I would love for our audience to get to know a little bit about you. So how long have you been in your industry? And, you can clarify what you as an individual industry you play in, if you want, versus like insurance or whatever. And what product are you most proud of so far?
Yeah. So I've been in the industry about 15 years. I started my career in retail e-commerce at a company that was once public and then was sold to venture capital because they weren't succeeding in business. They were starting to fail, and venture's job was really to turn it around. And I was brought in as a contractor and got in with an incredible group of individuals, stayed there for 7 years. It was at Express, kind of the mall brand, right? And I was working in their home office, and it was a really amazing experience. And then I moved into higher education and nonprofit consulting, so branding and marketing side of things, and then came over to insurance. I mean, if you would have told me that I was going to end up serving most of my career in insurance, I would have told you were full of shit. But I love it. I find it so rewarding. I've really gotten to play my entire repertoire of skill set over there. So I started in creative, moved closer into marketing, moved over to product design. And then now for the past 2 years, I've been the head of product. So product management, research, product design, and creative all reports into my organization here. So it's been a fun career and gotten to see a lot of cool stuff.
That sounds really fun. It really does. And I remember us talking earlier about Express, a previous chat, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I've been a hot mess over here. That sounds fun. And like, I love the idea of all these things coming together and what you said earlier about how just like the creative mind comes up with some really amazing solutions, right? Like, and especially in hard spaces, right? Like innovation happens when you're in a tough spot, right? Like it's the mother of all necessity. Like, what is it? What does they say? Like necessity is the mother of all innovation. That's the quote.
Yeah.
And I love that. And like, who better to come up with innovative ideas than creative thinking people, right? So,
yeah, exactly. I think there's so much that you can come up with, as you go into it. And even, it's funny, you'll a lot of times when you think about a business, I'll talk about business turnarounds kind of as a capital B, but, we could also talk about team or project turnarounds. But when we're talking about business turnaround, a lot of people think, well, that's the CEO's job or that's the finances, the finance team's job to figure that out. And it's like, okay, yes, it's their job. But creatives have these superpowers that these folks don't have. And I don't know if you've ever been in a time of crisis, but you're not exactly thinking straight. And so if you're not the one sitting there, as a finance person, if I'm sitting there just stressed and dreading my work and like having a hard time facing the reality, it is so comforting to have a neutral, kind of somewhat distant third party come in and help me like think through it. And it's really, one of the tactics that I talk about a lot is like creatives are so good at listening and being curious and being a sounding board, right? Like we listen to our customers all the time and we have to take in all this information and really empathize, like who are we connecting with and what's going on? And a lot of times we're the biggest ears in the room trying to process all this. And honestly, like sometimes finance partners, CEOs just need someone who can fucking shut up and listen and let them talk through everything. And, I go back to, the idea of rubber ducky debugging in engineering is a fun concept of like, sometimes you actually don't need, someone giving you ideas. You just literally need to say it, even to an inanimate object. But even better when it's a person who's a creative and is really listening, is taking notes, is distilling what you're coming up with and showing you, reflecting back to you like, hey, you may feel like you're stuck in a corner, CEO, but what if you did this? Or what if, you said you might want to do this, or you said this, I'm just reflecting back to you what you already told me. And a lot of times that's just a uniquely creative and right-brained skill set to be able to be okay with not knowing the analytical answer, and to just be there for the person and have some empathy there and what that looks like. So,
I mean, you see that a lot outside of creative, just like, I don't know if anybody listening has ever been to like counseling, but I've been to counseling several times to deal with all my like, childhood trauma and bullshit and try to like grow together with my wife over the past 20 years, right? And it's like sometimes you're just talking and it's like you're answering your own questions by listening to the shit that's coming out of your mouth because you just needed to expel it, right? And then if you have somebody on the other side that's actually analytical, and designers, specifically, I think is another subset within creatives, and designers take things and organize them until they let it work, right? Like that's the process. Like so when
Oh yeah.
you need designers and creatives to analyze these things and put them back together in a way, because you have this thing here, right? And as a designer, I heard this, like, people have the things like explain your job really terribly and in simple ways or something. It's like, and like, oh, designer, it's like I move things around until they look right. Like it's like, because as a designer, you're given these things, right? Like whatever, sort of text, a picture, this, that, whatever that is, whatever type of design you're doing. And your job is to make it flow, make it work, right? So that's just like innately in the training of the skill set, right? I just think that's an interesting concept. So
Yeah. Yeah. And that's exactly right. Is like, yeah, these people in business are just going to give you a set of stuff to just kind of swirl around and, reflect back to them. And it's incredibly, it's hilariously useful to do that. But it is challenging. Like as a designer, a lot of people are like, well, that's not design, so I don't want to do it. Or, is that really my best value? Like I'm good at making visuals or I'm good at doing this. But it's like, man, when you're in a turnaround moment, everybody has to kind of take a step back and think like, what's the next best thing I could do to help this business exist in time and space or get it sold or whatever the vision is there. But yeah, I think that is design. That's service design. That is like really figuring out big picture thinking and what that picture could eventually look like for the business design.
It's design thinking, right? Like the organizing the ideas. And I think there's something to be said for the level of transparency and clarity that happens. So you're in this critical place in your business. Now you can go, oh my God, let me show up and like, I'm going to figure it out all by myself. And I'm already panicking and like everything's on fire. Or you can be like, hey, look, everybody, like you guys love this place. I love this place. We want to make it work. This is the scenario. We're all adults. We're all intelligent. Nobody's here, out of any sort of like you earned your spot here, like kind of thing. Right. So it's just like,
Yeah.
how can we use the best of this brain power we have to fix the problems we have? Right. And it's like, if you don't care about your job, then like you probably don't want to go the extra mile to figure out what you need. Like, that's not my job, whatever. And like, yeah, there's some of that, especially the bigger the company is and the less you feel like the company cares about you. But companies, like 5 to like 150 people, like people really give a shit about the company because that company probably really gives a shit about them. And I think that like in those type of companies and startup communities and things like that, it's like lean on the brain power you have. Like you can come up with some really cool things and people are willing and wanting to help for
Exactly.
sure. So, yeah.
And I think you're spot on. Most people in a business, especially smaller businesses, and like, let's be clear, smaller businesses are just more likely to run out of funds. They're more likely to like when there's a market fluctuation to just get hit pretty hard and maybe not see it at first because they just don't have the constant monitoring that some of these bigger businesses have. And like a lot of businesses face like this turnaround moment of like, oh shit, we're going in the wrong direction. What do we do? And I think it is like really important, and it should be said explicitly that like especially if you're in a small to medium sized business, like everyone around you wants you to participate in this and help them and figure something out. And they want to give you more autonomy and they want to give you more, responsibility for like how to create outcomes in this business. I've never met a business owner who's like, yeah, I want my people to be less like, but take less ownership. Like I've never heard that said. The other thing I'll say is like, if you're in a company and it's not doing well, and that is like soul crushing to you, just do yourself a favor and just get out, because it will take every single person, especially in a small business, deciding we're going to turn this around for it to be successful. And sometimes you'll get one or two folks who'll just be like, not my jam, I'm out. And there is no shame in that scenario either. I don't know.
Better for everyone.
Exactly.
Better for everyone. If you've got 3 people, like five, let's say you got 5 people crushing it and 2 people like, I'm just here cashing my check. Like there's no, like, we can't afford that right now. Like, we need everyone to be all in on, like, we want to be here. We want to save this. We're on this mission together. And, you're only as strong as the weakest link kind of thing, and we've been there with my company. I've been around since 2006. I started this business with a blissful ignorance to having any clue of what I was doing. And like just knew I didn't want a job. And like we've been through, the first recession and COVID and all kinds of just like navigating and figuring. And there were many times where like we were, $30,000 in the hole for the year. And it's like, guys, this is where we're at. Like, this is what we need to do. And everyone just rallies around. Like my team's, a few of them been with me for like 12 years. Like, that's crazy, right? Like, and it's like, but that's what it takes, right? It takes people that galvanize together, work as a unit, like really care about each other. And there's really nothing you can't do. Like, we're a small business. I lost $50,000 of revenue in like 3 days when COVID hit. Just people just canceling things. And it's like when people really realized what was going on, I was like, oh my God. And I just communicated with everybody. It's like, guys, it's going to be rough. And we figured it out, right? It was one of those weird points for me that like some of my staff realized like they're friends with these big jobs of these big corporations, just got laid off. Like they were nobody. Just like, so, got to protect our CEO's third mansion. Sorry. And it's like I didn't take any pay for 6 months, and I figured it out personally, so I didn't have to fire anybody or cut anybody's pay. And I saw a lot of that in the small business community because we care about each other so much. And I think a lot of us operate under this mentality, like I'm the leader. And, Simon Sinek's book, Leaders Eat Last. I love that. But it's so true, right? Like if that's how that should be, right? Like I'm not a boss, and there's not a lot of like bosses in these smaller companies. There are people like, hey, I'm the leader, like keep up, I'm up front, I'm doing twice the work, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and like I should be inspiring you from the front, not pushing you from the back kind of thing. So anyways, I don't know.
No, I think that's so right. And something that you said I think is so important is like, especially in small business, and again, big business, if Amazon were struggling, like good luck them, like good luck trying to like help that business turn around. They're going to figure that out on their own. But a small business, every person in the business is just a normal, messy human who is doing their best, right? And as a leader, like I see so much amazing servant leadership in the small and medium-sized business community. Our CEO, even though we're a very large insurtech, I saw the same thing. He was the one who took cuts. He took a lot of the hit before any other part of our business did. And seeing that, I was like, damn, I am all in, one, and I'm going to help you. Like, I'm going to be that sounding board for you. I'm going to help you organize, and, it is funny. Like sometimes in the chaos, people will look up to the leaders and the leaders will be going, and then everyone's like, oh my God, they're fucked up. And it's like, no. They're just human having a really bad day and are probably taking more on the chin than you will ever know, nor should ever know. Right. And, but again, I think that's where, if you're game for it, just stepping up and like being willing to say, you know what? These leaders are messy as hell. I'm going to help them get their thoughts out. I'm going to help them organize this thing. I'm going to help them, another great skill set, I guess, from a creative perspective is like facilitation, workshopping, brainstorming, right? So not just being a sounding board one-on-one, but actually saying, all right, I've got a bunch of messy, scared humans all together. What are we going to do with this? And, if you just leave a handful of scared leaders by themselves to try to figure it out, they get defensive, they can get blamey, they can, a whole bunch of just normal bad human behavior can happen. Doesn't always, but can happen. And sometimes just having a neutral moderator. Hey, we're going to get together and talk about the budget cuts. Hey, we're going to get together and talk about, how we get more clients because these clients backed out, right? We're going to get together and brainstorm exactly how we can solve some of these big macro problems that are affecting the business or affecting the team. Um, Having a facilitator call the meeting and like run the agenda and actually like, hey, all right, now we're going to spend 10 minutes throwing up post-it notes on this topic and here's what happens. Like it is such an underrated skill set sometimes, but especially for leaders. Like if you've got that access because you're in a small business, like man, it's so much better to be supporting those leaders who really are taking huge cuts to make sure that this company can keep going and keep trying,
Yeah. I love that. And that's what real leadership should look like, right? It really should. And I think, we won't get too far into the weeds of some of the problems with the structures of how businesses are run in this company or this country as they get larger. But yeah, I think that's the stuff that like just gives me the warm and fuzzies, right? Like hearing about other leaders doing this, like just picking the company first and the people first and like making sure that like everybody's getting taken care of and not just themselves. It's definitely nice. I saw some notes here on our little sheet, something about killing your darlings. I'd love to explore this concept a little bit. So
killing your darlings, this is a tactic that I use early and often in all types of turnarounds, whether that's a team turnaround, a project turnaround, or a company turnaround. And from a design perspective or creative perspective, what it really looks like is, okay, let's say your company is really struggling. And you know this. And you've heard people talk, and there's like rumors of reductions in force. There's rumors of all kinds of stuff. All right, well, you've got a choice. You can sit around and wait for it to like be cast upon you at some point in time. Or you can say, shit, I'm hearing grumbles. I'm going to take 8 steps back, try to figure out what's actually going on here, do some snooping, some, sleuthing in your business to figure out, go talk to the right people, go talk to your leaders to figure out like, man, okay, what kind of trouble is this? We don't have to get a clear answer on if there's a reduction. You don't have to get a clear answer on tactics, but you need to know, like, is it a financial issue? Is it a big client pulled out issue? Like, what's the issue? And then I challenge everybody, put your consultant hat on and go look at the work you're currently working on, right? And is this work still valuable in light of this new information? So like a great example that we had at Root was we got to a point where inflation and these just like crazy market forces were so bad that our marketing wasn't profitable. And here's insurance. I'm from retail, so it's like, I don't know. I made these pants for $5. I'm going to sell them for 10. Like it's a pretty easy mathematics equation of pricing. Like I'm going to sell them for more than I paid for them. Easy. And insurance, I'm making a bet. I don't actually know if you're going to get into an accident and how severe it's, or if you'll never get into an accident. So the pricing is a really tough science to get to. And anyways, so you can have these cases where you're marketing and you have efficient marketing, reasonable acquisition costs, all this stuff, but then you're actually losing money because of the losses that you end up accruing when somebody gets into an accident. So anyways, we found ourselves in this high inflationary environment where, we thought something would cost $20,000 to fix, this vehicle, and it was costing $40,000 to fix this vehicle. Shit. So we ramped down our marketing, and it didn't take me long to realize, oh, well, if we're not spending marketing dollars, why am I still making all these ads that'll never get tested, right? So that's an example of, I had a whole machine set up to just keep making ads, right? Because that's what we had done for years and years and years prior. And we always were cranking out new work so that we could always be running tests. But when there's these huge market shifts or when like a downturn really impacts certain areas of the business, you really do need to like take an audit and say like, man, okay, what is actually adding value here? And how do I free up my time to go work on what's really going to add value to the business? And again, I'm not recommending you just like stop working on stuff, but I am recommending like put your consultant hat on, do a full audit, and then take that audit back to the people who just gave you that information and say, hey, I really took to heart what you just said. Does any of this help? Does any of this help to just like quiet the noise or to help us get priorities, my priorities align now with your priorities, right? And so here's what I'm not doing. And then offer your services, then say, all right, then when I'm not doing this, like, do you need help facilitating these things? Do you want to have like ongoing conversations? I'll help document, I'll help come up with ideas, like whatever that looks like. But really, killing your darlings is, I think, a really hard thing. Something we had to do at Root was we had just a huge social media presence at one point in time across a lot of different channels. And I mean, during this turnaround, there were some cruxy points where I'm like, where is this business really going? And does this Instagram post matter if we're going there, right? And so, we kind of scaled back to almost a minimum viable product, right? And it was something that we really prided ourselves on our social media channels. But at a certain point, it was like, yeah, I can't honestly justify spending that time there, right? It's hard. And it's not to say that you'll never get back to that either. I think some people are afraid, like, well, if I kill this budget, if I kill this thing, will it ever come back? And the answer is, yeah, probably. It'll just take time, but at least your business will be around too and get value out of it. You'll have a job. So
Yeah, and I think, you never come out of a crisis the same as you went in, right? Like
no,
the variables change, all the things changes, and you can never predict why you're going to get there or how you're going to cut. And it's like, so will it come back? Maybe, but it might be different. It might be better. It might be new. It might be, who knows, right? Like, so you just like, you have to be able to evolve, right? Because technology changes so much and scenarios change so much, and so much has gone on just in our lifetimes in the business world. Like, it's been pretty insane. Like, and I've heard the concept that you're talking about being referred to as leading from the bottom, right? Like going, hey, like, what do I'm not in a leadership role, but I see what leadership's doing. How do I give them my best ideas and go, hey, this is what I think this should look like. I'm doing it this way. Would this way be better? And here's what I think about that. And they might go, no, but they'll appreciate you having that, like, I care moment, right? Like, it's not just like, oh, I'm logged in. Let me do A, B, C, D and get out of here. Like, and some jobs have that. And some people have jobs like that for a reason, because they just want to pay their bills and go the fuck home and live their life. But some people like me, like, I can't work a job. Like, I need to be invested in a thing. Like, I need to feel like it's moving and building something that I'm excited about. I had a job before I started this business in '06, and it made me miserable. And it was literally like, go in and like, I was working on like a tech support thing in this huge like Fortune 100 company, and I was miserable. It made me never want to have a job again. It was so And some people love it. I still have friends that still work there. They make like $200,000 a year, and they love it. And like, it works for them. Like, I hated it with all, like, there's no amount of money that I can trade my life for like repetitive boredom. Like, I don't care how much money. If you want to pay me $1 million a year to put a sticker on a truck and a thing, like, I wouldn't do it. I would quit after a week. I don't care how much money it is.
Totally. Yeah, I could not. I absolutely could not. And again, it's like, no shame. No. If that's what people want to do. And like, if that's the case, I highly recommend people tap out, move on to a different company if you're experiencing a turnaround, because like, that's not it. But yeah, I could, it's, I can't even imagine.
There are some people like you who love that, like, who've like, that's where all the things are firing, and you hit that flow state of like, what if we did this, and you connect that dot with this dot, and we could do this, and they're like, and all of a sudden you have this magical plan you put together that you needed somebody with what we say nonlinear thinking, right? Like, this there's nothing sequential. This is like astrological, like star. We're making like stars what do they call constellations in the stars, right? Like, I really love that. That's super cool. So, tell me about a time other than Root. It sounds like you had another one. You probably said this twice, but is there any other cool stories of like pivotal turnaround moments or things like that in your career that you just think would be fun to highlight? You don't have to use specific company names and stuff, but
Yeah, I'll highlight two. So, I mean, the first one I already briefly mentioned Express, and I came in as a very, very junior designer in the space, and they really needed me to help support a small team who was building emails and the homepage, designs and some ads, right? And what was so cool about that, and I was interviewing a few, years and years later, and I was explaining my progression at Express and what I got to learn and what I saw and, how the business turnaround happened because, and who was all involved. And they were like, you got paid to get an MBA and you didn't even know it. And I'm like, oh shit, I did. I definitely got an MBA because I got like, here's how you manage the financial part of the turnaround. Here's how you then you make a strategic vision. I would have thought it was the opposite. And it's like, oh no, I learned that you gotta stop the bleeding first. You gotta figure out where the bleeding is in their business. Then you have to turn it around. Then you have to create a vision and then you have to go get that vision, right? And it was really fun. Like Express was sold, I think in 2008 to venture. And I think it was by 2010, we were back to being a public company and kind of on the up and up. And then I left in 2016 and God only knows what happened. And, now I think they just declared bankruptcy or something. So it didn't stick, but hey, I did my best at the time. But it was really cool to see. And really some folks that I really admired from that time. The CMO, so my first desk at Express was like in this weird little cubicle area, but it was right across the hall from the CMO's office. And it was this new CMO who does inflection point work. Her name is Lisa Gavalis. And just kind of getting to watch her work and how she manages and how she directs and what that looks like. And she was artful in a way that I had never seen before. And it just was so inspiring to me. So getting, I think, to watch her was like really, really critical. So yeah, I always say I guess I got my MBA about, specializing in business turnarounds because of Express, then going into consulting and higher education and nonprofits. It was, I think universities and colleges are having admissions issues across the board. I think after, they grew a lot to really accommodate peak millennials, which is like the peak baby boomers kids, right? And so they had to like grow. And then they were like, oh no, now we're like, it's a soggy, stretched out sweater. They're like, we don't have enough students to fill these seats like across the board. There's just not the population there anymore. And so what do we do? So they were facing a lot of admissions crises and how to manage that. And so coming in and being able to help a handful of universities and colleges with that was really fun. And then I'd say the last thing I'll bring up is actually a small retail business. They had 10 stores. It's a plant shop. This was very recently. I did some just pro bono work for them. And it was like half of their stores were profitable and the other half were not. And it was just like sucking them down a drain. And, these founders started this company because they love plants and they love people and they love like beautiful aesthetic stores. They did not get in business to go negotiate with landlords, about like, hey, I can't have a store here anymore because there's not the foot traffic, right? And so, helping them be a sounding board and just say, no, you are going to have to go sounds like you are going to have to go have some hard conversations and like, call me when it's done and we can cry together, like that's what needs to happen and you've got to do it today kind of thing. So that's another one. And they I'm pleased to report that they shut down all the unprofitable stores, and it's allowing them then to pay their obligations and to get back on solid footing and to make sure that like they want to do right by the people that they've had to kind of like walk away from. But man, walking away allowed them to do right by those folks, right? It's kind of this interesting catch-22. So I think that was a really interesting one, a really heart-wrenching one to see like just such a beautiful passion project that had just like blossomed, fall into like, I mean, we mapped out a few different models and it's like there's only one that works and it's called shutting down stores. Otherwise you'll be seeing everybody in bankruptcy court. So do you want that? Like, which is worse? Sometimes you just have to decide which evil you want to go after.
You're doing the Doctor Strange thing. It's like there's one scenario. We pick Thanos.
Yeah. I always try to find multiple scenarios, but man, sometimes, and in that case, like there was one. I'm like,
you know what? There was one, and you found it. So
yeah, we found it. We found it.
Yeah, well, yes, it was a team effort. Yeah, and that's just how it goes. And look, once they build themselves back up on that one, right, they could expand again, and they could figure out, oh, hey, what did we do wrong last time? And a lot of times in business, and I think some people beat themselves up, like you can do everything right and still fail, right? Like it's just like a species of creature in the wild, right? They can be doing amazing things and a storm comes through and destroys their natural habitat, or humans. It's probably humans if we're going to be honest. And then, now they can no longer survive there and they die. Right. So it's like, it's about adaptability and the fact that like, okay, how do we stay alive? What do we need to do to survive? Because like no one, within reason could predict COVID, right? Like, and like,
no,
we had all these plans and these business plans. And like, I made it whole, if you haven't been to my, it's on my Facebook page for Colorful Car.
Yeah.
I made a tribute to COVID, right? So it was like, it says January 2020 on the left side. I'm like in my, business get up on the couch and I got my plan behind me. And then on the same couch, it's like December 2020. I'm in some sweatpants and like my beard's grown out and my hair's grown out. I'm like smoking a cigarette and like just don't give a shit. I'm playing COVID bingo or like 2020 bingo on my business plan board. It was so much fun. I spent like 30 hours making this Photoshop thing. It's super cool. So you get a chance to look at it. But yeah, the moral of that story is you just never know what's going to happen. And just you can't be married to any particular part of it. You've got to be adaptable and you've got to be open to expert opinions and just like push forward, right? Like I think my biggest success in business is that like I don't have a plan B. I barely have plan A. Like I'm sort of just like, it's like go with the flow, do what feels good, what fills my cup, what like when a client gives me money, I feel like I give them more than that in value in return, right? Like, and just go where like it feels good, right? Bring in people like when they're working with us, do they feel good working here? Like, just trust my gut all the time. Because like, and then every time I've tried to make a plan, especially like a 5-year plan, like the world's so different every 5 years. Like, it's just like, it's really kind of esoteric to like, oh, in 5 years, we're going to be doing, but there is some magic to having an idea of where you're trying to head, even though like it's never gonna be right. So just giving you some direction, like, hey, we need to head north, and like I don't know if we need to head like way over here or way over there or somewhere in this range. We're going that way, like so. It's that's how I look at it, at least. But what do I know? I'm just a crazy creative guy. So
no, I mean, I think you're spot on. I think we always, I think there's a quote. I don't know who said it. Planning is everything and plans are nothing. Is, the process of planning or the process of looking and figuring out, I want to go north is really important, and critical for the business, but exactly how you get there and like plotting it out step by step by step by step by step, you're just setting yourself up for like to not follow that plan and to be very disappointed in yourself for not following that plan. And actually, tying this back to turnarounds, that's actually a misconception when you go into turnarounds. A lot of times people are like, well, when you walked into this team that was like not functioning, did you give them a compelling vision to go after? And it's like, absolutely not. Because if you try to like over plan on top of chaos, it just turns into more chaos, and nobody goes, or everyone goes, that's a nice plan and a nice vision that we'll never get to. This person is like out of touch, like it doesn't feel real because the reality is much more messy than that, right? And to your point, like a 5-year plan, I'm sure it's great for these big businesses. Like I bet State Farm, who's been around for over 100 years, could make a really great and compelling 5-year plan and just like stick to it. But any of us who have not been around for 100 years, who are not, billions of dollars in revenue, right? And don't have like huge diversified revenue streams, a 5-year plan is like really challenging. And again, it's good to know where you're headed. I'm not saying not to think bigger and to understand where you're trying. Are you trying to be a bigger business? Are you trying to be the same size? Are you trying kind of think about your position within the market? That's incredibly important. But if you're in a turnaround moment, the number one thing to do is figure out how to stop the bleeding. Like you've got to focus on the what's the problem and the tactics that need done. And then you can look forward. But again, to your point, like even when you look forward, don't get beholden to that because some external factor could come in and smack you down again.
Yep.
And so you've got to stay focused yet flexible is another concept that we talk a lot about in business agility is you've got to have focus, but you can't lock yourselves in to when you get new information, you're unable to adapt. Like that's just not the world we live in, unfortunately.
100%. You gotta learn how to ride the chaos.
That's right. That's right.
I love it. I love it. All right. Well, that's probably a good place to roll into our wrap-up question here. This went so fast. Like, this was a great conversation. Yeah, fantastic. Okay, well, so we have one last question for you here. Is there anyone or anything in your career that you'd like to shout out to the audience? Maybe a mentor, a valuable resource, or favorite client?
Yeah, I'll call. Since we talked a lot about Express, I'll throw some of these great people a shout out. Jude Redder he was the VP of Product and Engineering at Express. He, I was really in the creative department for more or less my entire time at Express, but at the very end of my tenure, the last few years, Jude really took me in and showed me the product world. And that's really where I got that experience. And I, now in my role of head of product, I'm just endlessly grateful for what he's shown me. And, I think it's sometimes, I fall into the trap of like looking externally, for mentors, I'll be like, nobody here in this business is like what I want or what, I'll get real picky. But honestly, like the best mentors I've ever had have been like sitting at the desk next to me, and Jude was hands down one of those folks. And I was lucky because I did realize it in the moment. And I very much like, hitched my wagon to him and learned everything I could in my time with him. But yeah, I would say he's my shout out today.
Awesome. Shout out to Jude. And another bit of wisdom there. Just always be looking to learn from the people around you. Like even everybody knows different things than you. Like, and if you can identify like, hey, so-and-so knows a whole lot about this, like soak it up, especially in a community, a smaller, even any type of business, like people typically want to help each other, at least in my experience. Yeah. So I love that, learn all you can. It just makes you more valuable and more adaptable. So.
Yeah. And an easy tactic for that, I actually just had this conversation with a couple of people is make a list of the things that you want to learn and see if anybody around you fits that bill and go talk to them about it. And also go talk to those people and just ask them one question. What's your superpower? What do you feel like you're best in the world at? And see if that interests you at all. And if it is, then be like, I want you to mentor me on that.
I love it. Okay, that's fantastic advice. Look at that, 2 nuggets of wisdom. Let's go.
2.
Well, I guess it's a deeper level under the set. Anyways, whatever.
Fash.
I like it. All right. A big shout out to Kevin Rapp, who connected us. Kevin's amazing. If you don't, you should follow him on LinkedIn. If you don't, so much good information.
He's hilarious.
Always posting creative things and is entirely hilarious. The guy's wonderful, but like serious at the same time, like seriously good stuff. Also a hilarious take on it. Like, I love the guy. He's great. And he was on a previous episode as well. If you go back a few, he's in there. All right. So we've been talking with Jill Kellett, who's the VP of Product at Root Insurance. You can check out their website at joinroot.com. But if listeners want to follow up with you directly, where should they go?
They can go to jillkellett.com. And I do have office hours every Tuesday. So if anybody wants to jump in, talk about a turnaround they're experiencing, anything like that, I've got those available and kind of reserved for outside folks.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for that, Jill. All right, Jill. Well, thanks for being on the show, and we'll see you next time, friends.
All right. Thanks, Carl.
We really hope you enjoyed the show. Please like and subscribe to join us on our next journey through the world of art and business on the Pixel Retentive Podcast.